Letitia James is now threatening to take Trump's property if he doesn't pay his bill. The same bill that came from Judge Engoron after a show trial with Letitia James sitting in the back pew, not actually doing any work, just sitting there observing. But what happened was $450 million got assessed to Trump. Not even any time has been allotted for him to appeal this. He's got a very limited amount of time before he's got to secure the funds, post the bond, and get it done immediately within 30 days. And if he doesn't, Tish says she's just going to go take his property, which is crazy because I thought we lived in a country where we did not have our buildings seized by tyrannical maniacs, but apparently that's changing rapidly. And ABC News sat down with her. I am not going to play her because we do not have the tolerance for that. But Tishy says, I'm ready to seize Trump's property if he can't pay his fraud fine of $354 million, which is insane. We're going to hear Kevin O'Leary rage about this in a minute. But 4 days, okay, after they ordered almost $500 million in fines, she told ABC News that we're prepared to seize Trump's assets. If he does not have the funds to pay off his judgment, then we're going to seek judgment enforcement mechanisms in court. And we're going to ask the judge to seize his assets, she said in an interview that will spare our earballs. Trump was fined $354.8 million plus $100 million in interest, and the former president has denied all wrongdoing. But she says, Trump says he's very confident, but Tishy says we are prepared to make sure that the judgment is paid to New Yorkers. And yes, I look at Wall Street each and every day. She directly countered Trump's allegation that there were no victims. She said financial fraud are not victimless crimes. He engaged in a massive amount of fraud that had no victims. Okay, it wasn't just a simple mistake. There are variations are wildly exaggerated and the fraud was staggering. Okay, who lost money though? If average New Yorkers went into a bank and submitted false documents, he didn't. They were statements of financial condition. They were subjective statements with a disclaimer on it. The government would throw the book at him. No, they wouldn't. And she says Wall Street's doing fine, right? They're wondering if there's going to be a mass exodus of business. And she says, last I checked, tourism is up. Yeah, tourism from what? Guatemala? Is that what you're talking about? From Honduras? Yeah, you do have a lot of tourists there. Okay, nicely done. So that is Tishy Letish, and that's what they do, right? They're communists. They destroy things. What's yours is now theirs. We will hear these people cry foul about Putin, right? About how he seizes buildings and seizes property and he's a dictator. And the city of New York, the state of New York, is about to steal buildings from Donald Trump because he did business in the state. It's insane. But Trump's lawyers are now asking for the judge essentially to reconsider. They sent this in. They said, look, you did not, Judge Engoron, follow the rules before you issued your order. They sent this one in February 21st to Judge Engoron, aka Areola, aka the Nip. He said, all right, Judge Engoron, we write on behalf of all defendants here in response to the Attorney General's improper and unilateral submission of a proposed judgment when they sent that in to you on February 20th, 2024. Now, she apparently sent this in at 5:21, the proposed judgment, which incredibly states that it is on motion of Letitia James, on motion. But it fails to provide any notice whatsoever to us, and it deprived the defendants, Trump, of an opportunity to be heard before the judgment is entered, okay? Judge issued a ruling, then there's a proposed form of judgment. She submitted her response, and they're saying, we didn't get to submit our take on this. You just accepted hers without our input. Now, as set forth below, Trump respectfully requests that the court set a return date for the proposed judgment that actually affords Trump sufficient time to submit a proposed counter judgment. Like, you should hear from both sides before you just act. Now, as the Court of Appeals explained, the appropriate procedural mechanism for submitting a judgment to the clerk of the court for more complicated dispositions like these, where we have follow-up procedures, is a directive to settle order. Now, because the decision ordinarily entails more complicated relief, the instruction contemplates notice to the opponent so that both parties may either agree or have counter proposals and settle this. But your court decision and order that was dated on February 16th, it directed the clerk of the court to just enter judgment. Didn't even hear from us. Notwithstanding, the Attorney General has now taken it upon herself to submit a proposed judgment to the clerk, again, without notice to Trump and without conferring with his counsel, clearly hoping the clerk will issue the proposed judgment before Trump even has a chance to review it. In other words, she submitted it, enter this, and didn't even tell Trump. They're scammers, let alone submit a proposed counter judgment. This conduct not only violates your decision, but it's clearly designed and intended to prejudice Trump. Now, given the Attorney General's submission, that's Tishy, of the proposed order and the fact that the February 16th decision entails a more complicated relief, including restraints and follow-up procedures, Trump now submit that the appropriate procedural mechanism for submitting a judgment to the clerk is a directive to settle order. So Trump therefore requests the court set a return date for the proposed judgment that actually actually allows Trump sufficient time to submit a counter-judgment. To deprive Trump of the opportunity to submit the proposed counter-judgment would be contrary to the fundamental fairness and due process under the law. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Do you think we could be involved at all in the trial? Can we please participate, since you know you're billing us a half bill? Signed by Clifford S. Robert on behalf of Donald Trump into Judge Engoron. We'll see what he says. So we have more reaction. Earlier this week, in the aftermath of the verdict, Kevin O'Leary was very upset about it. He obviously is in New York, does a bunch of business there, and he posted yet another conversation. This came clipped over via Kanekoa the Great, shout out, and this was an exchange with O'Leary over on Fox Business. And man, he was fired up. Here's what he said, saying all businesses are going to have to reconsider what they're doing in New York, where you can just do business normally, have a subjective value of your financial condition, proffer that to a very sophisticated bank who does their own due diligence, comes to their conclusion on what the numbers are, you come to terms, they make money, you get the loan, you're happy, everyone's happy. You have some psycho who runs for office who has a specific stated mission of destroying you. She gets elected and then proceeds to destroy you. How is that conducive to business in America? Kevin O'Leary says it's not.
Just leaving the whole Trump thing out of it and seeing what occurred here, and I'm no different than any other investor. I'm shocked at this. I can't even understand or fathom the decision at all. There's no rationale for it. And so let me give you a real-time experience I'm having regarding this, and I'm not the only one. It doesn't matter what the governor says. New York was already a loser state, like California is a loser state. There are many loser states because of policy, high taxes, uncompetitive regulation. It was already on the top of the list of being a loser state. I would never invest in New York now, and I'm not the only person saying that. And here's a real-time situation. In development in real estate right now, the hottest asset class is very high-end data centers. They cost anywhere from $2.5 to $3.5 billion each. They're very expensive. They require low power. You need permits. But most of the major institutions in the world need more data centers, and that's why developers like me are doing this. Now, you need power. So New York has Niagara Falls. Normally, you'd consider that to put in one of these facilities, create 400 jobs, 5 more jobs for each of one of those for auxiliary services. I can't go to New York. So I'm going to Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia. Good. Governor Stitt, Kevin Stitt, my staff have met with him. Governor Burgum, the same thing. Governor Justice. Those are winner states. They don't do things like this. I have to syndicate that debt and all that equity. We're talking billions of dollars here. Do you think any foreign institution or any private equity firm or any pension fund would touch New York? No. And that's why New Yorkers should be concerned. The fine people of New York should ask themselves, why are we such a loser state? How are we going to attract business? It's not just the existing businesses that are fleeing out to Texas and Florida. What about new money like this I'm talking about, like a $4 billion data center? Not a chance I would put that in New York. Zero probability. Never. And so they've got a lot of work to do to find themselves getting out of this situation. This has all occurred post-pandemic. Winner states versus loser states. Look at Tennessee right now, fastest growing city in America, Nashville. Winner state, good policy, competitive taxes. You've got to start thinking about this in the context of winners and losers. New York, mega loser state.
Nice.
So, Kevin, what did you think of Governor Hochul saying this is like a unique one and done because Donald Trump went too far?
They always say that, right? They're always only going to use their power to go after Trump, but they're not, J6 is never going to happen again, and we're not going to impeach someone else, or we're not going to blame someone else of Russia collusion. It's all fake, right? It's like once the genie's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle, and they have broken glass in case of emergency, and you don't go back from that, right? Try to cover this up and say, we promise we're not going to do it again. No one believes that for a second.
It's so nefarious. You guys, if you're just doing what you should be doing, you have nothing to worry about, but they're very worried about it.
Yeah, we're very worried. Every investor's worried because where is the victim? Who lost money? This is some arbitrary decision a judge made. This policy and what this says, what does this say about the bar, the legal bar?
It's a joke, okay? You can just do whatever you want. They're also captured in these states. Like, they're okay with this. They're perfectly okay with Tishy because the law is being used to further their ends.
In New York, aren't they going to question this judge?
And where are the other lawyers also, by the way? Like, there's a bunch of other lawyers who are just sitting around just saying, I guess this is normal. It's like that dog meme, right? Where he's in that building and it's burning down with that cup of coffee. He's like, this is all fine, I guess. The court systems are not following the law, right? They're all being exploited by people to go after their political opponents. And it makes me sick as somebody who loves the law and wanted my whole life to be about the law and justice, really, freedom and justice. And the law is being perverted to go against that, right? It's actually enabling state communists to go and steal property from people and imprison their political opponents.
What is this? $355 million, and there's dollars as as a penalty, and there's plus interest at 9%, and there's no victim? I mean, I'm sorry, her words fall on deaf ears to everybody. There's nothing she can say to justify this decision. And this has nothing to do with Trump. Forget about Trump. This is not a Trump situation. This is a New York problem now. The whole world is looking at this saying, what are you doing to yourselves?
Yeah, it's bad. And it's going to, I think, ultimately in the long term, contribute to the great self-sort, and I think this is going to accelerate that. I think people are going to recognize that your private property, it's not really your private property anymore. It's kind of whatever prosecutor decides to run against you and steal it from you. And if that is how the constituency is going to vote, if you're living in a blue state and they'll just steal it from you, then that's that. And our government has already been on this train for a while. They took all the Russian assets. They just started taking people's yachts. That's our yacht now. We go, that's really weird, because I thought we were a country that had principles about private property and about equal protection under the law and about due process under the law. And we didn't have a partisan politicization of the law. All of that is now gone. And people will resort, right? And I do believe Kevin O'Leary when he says, I'm done with New York, because the last thing you want is to be a businessman like Trump, come out on the wrong side of a Tish or a Fannie and have your entire empire ripped away from you. So with all of this going on, my friends, I know it can feel deflating. I know it can feel like it's overwhelming. It can feel like, my gosh, these little communist dictators are winning everywhere we look, but they're not. I think that all of this is just, they're sowing the seeds of their own destruction. There's only so many buildings you can steal from people who produce stuff. There's only so much power you can gobble up before the actual people say, we've had enough of your insanity, and leave. And so the man himself, who is facing all of this, he has a very nice message as we close out this segment. He says, what are we going to do here? How are we going to enact our revenge? All we're going to do is win. Our success will be our revenge.
My revenge will be success.
You told Maria Bartiromo that you may campaign in the Bronx or at Madison Square Garden. When might that be happening?
Very soon. Look, we have 9 months yet, but I'm going to see about Madison Square Garden, and we're going to go to the South Bronx, and we're going to go to Queens and other areas, because if you look at what's happened in New York, I'm not even blaming the mayor. I think the mayor has sort of been told to take a back seat a little bit because they came after him violently. They came after him like they're going to indict him when he started speaking up, and now he's become quiet.
Yeah, because it's all part of the operation. And I have no doubt there are many good people in New York who are also tired of this. And so hopefully they also stand up and they say, what the heck is happening to our country? The man who built some of the biggest, best buildings in New York City, some of the most iconic buildings, who was there after 9/11, standing on the street, all this stuff, like an icon of New York, they just say to themselves, we're going to rip his property down. We're going to rip it all away. Why would anybody build another building in New York ever again? Maybe they won't. And so hopefully the people of New York recognize what's going on and they speak out in force, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. Fortunately, Donald Trump is unflappable, and he's like, well, we'll just win harder. How about that? Save America that way. And so we're going to be here, my friends, continuing to cover this case and all the rest of the Trump prosecutions. Thanks for subscribing and joining us. Thanks for liking this video. Thank you for inviting a friend or someone you know. Come over here, check this out, and so they can join us as we go through all of this. We got great links in the description below. Would love to see you at watcherlodge.com, because we've got amazing free events coming up. We're talking about building your food sovereignty supply. We're talking about getting Zenned out with political Zen wellness. A lot of other fun things, all free. Come check it out, watcherlodge.com, and we'll see you back here on the next one.